All right, today we are diving deep into the mind of one of history's most, let's say, controversial thinkers, Thomas Hobbes. He makes this powerful and, for a lot of people, a pretty terrifying case for why we absolutely need a single, all-powerful ruler. But to even begin to understand his shocking conclusion, you have to understand the world that made him.
This right here. This is probably Hobbes's most famous line, and honestly, it's the key to his entire philosophy. It's such a bleak, stark view of what humanity is like in its natural state. So the big question for us in this explainer is, how on earth did he get there?
I mean, really, why would anyone come to such a profoundly dark conclusion about, well, us? For Hobbes, you have to understand, this wasn't some abstract thought experiment he cooked up in a comfy chair. No, this was a direct reflection of the chaotic, violent, and frankly terrifying world he was living in.
To really get Hobbes, you have to realize his philosophy wasn't born in a quiet library. It was forged in an age of nonstop conflict, widespread violence, and a kind of constant, inescapable fear.
I mean, his entire life was literally bookended by war. He famously said that he and fear were born twins because his mother went into labor from the sheer terror of the approaching Spanish Armada. Then he grows up only to live through the absolutely brutal English Civil War, watching his own country tear itself apart over politics and religion. All this trauma gave him one single overriding obsession: find a way, any way, to create lasting peace and stop the chaos.
So that's it. His whole philosophical project, everything he wrote, was an attempt to solve this one massive problem. He wasn't just daydreaming about the meaning of life. He was trying to engineer a real-world solution to stop people from killing each other. And to do that, he knew he needed a new, more rigorous way of thinking.
See, Hobbes didn't want to just offer up another opinion. He wanted to create a science of politics. He's looking around at the scientific revolution just exploding, with guys like Galileo and Descartes changing everything. And he thought, hey, why can't we do that? Why can't we apply that same scientific rigor to people and governments? So what he does is he basically creates his own intellectual recipe, combining all the cutting-edge ideas of his time. From Francis Bacon, he takes the idea that you have to start with what you can actually see and observe in the real world. From Galileo, he borrows the method of analysis, breaking a complicated thing down into its smallest, simplest parts to see how it works. And from Descartes, he takes the power of step-by-step, bulletproof logic to build it all back up into a coherent system. This idea right here is the engine that drives his entire project. He makes this huge assumption that everything, and he really means everything, can be explained by physical cause and effect. No divine mysteries, no appeals to supernatural forces, just matter and motion, from the way planets move to the way you think.
Okay, so with this brand new scientific toolkit in hand, Hobbes points it right at the human mind. He wants to take apart human nature with the same precision that a mechanic would use to take apart an engine.
He starts by making this really key distinction. First, there are primary qualities. These are things that exist out in the real world objectively. Think of a campfire, the size of the fire, the motion of the embers. Those are real, measurable facts. But then you have secondary qualities, things like the orange color, the crackling sound, the feeling of warmth. Hobbes says those things don't exist in the fire. They are subjective experiences created inside our minds by the primary qualities. Our brains are actively interpreting reality, not just recording it.
And if you follow that logic, the mind just becomes a kind of machine. Sensation is the input, physical stuff bumping into our senses. Imagination, that's just the fading echo of those sensations, like when you see a bright flash and there's an afterimage. And reasoning, for Hobbes, that's just a mechanical process, one thought triggering the next, like a chain of falling dominoes in your brain. Consciousness itself is just a side effect of all this machinery whirring away.
And this is the absolute core of his psychology. He argues that reason isn't what drives us. Not at all. Our passions do. Our desires for things we want and our fears of things we want to avoid. Those are the real engines of human behavior. Reason, for Hobbes, is just the scout we send out to find the best way to get what our passions already want.
This leads into this idea called psychological egoism. Now, this is super important. He is not making a moral judgment here. He isn't saying we should be selfish. He's saying that as a matter of cold, hard scientific fact, we just are. We are all wired to be fundamentally driven by our own self-interest. And the most powerful, most primal drive we have is the desire to just stay alive.
So, if you accept his premises, if you accept that we're all just self-interested machines ruled by our passions and a deep fear of dying,
Then his political conclusions start to follow with this terrifying, almost inescapable logic.
Hobbes asks us to do a little thought experiment. Just imagine a world with no government, no laws, no police, no rules at all. He calls this the state of nature. What would that world actually be like?
Well, his answer is grim. In this state, everyone has total freedom to do whatever it takes to survive. But because we're all self-interested, this always inevitably leads to a war of all against all. You can't trust anyone. You can't build anything. There's no progress. There's just constant paralyzing fear. And this is the world where life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short.
So if that's our natural starting point, is there any way out? Is there any escape? Well, Hobbes says yes, and ironically, the way out comes from that same self-interest. Our powerful, rational desire to not die is what finally motivates us to find an escape hatch.
And here it is, his famous solution, the social contract. He argues that a bunch of rational, self-interested people who were all terrified of a violent death would willingly make a deal. They'd all agree to give up their dangerous natural freedoms, every last one, and hand over total power to one single absolute authority. A king, a sovereign, what he famously calls the Leviathan. In exchange for giving up their freedom, they get the one thing they want more than anything else: safety, security. It's the ultimate trade. You trade your liberty to save your life.
And when Hobbes says absolute, believe me, he means absolute. The sovereign gets the final say on everything: laws, property, even religion. You have to remember, Hobbes saw religious arguments tear England apart. So his solution was to give the sovereign complete control over religion for the state, not because one religion was true, but to make sure it could never again become the cause of a civil war.
So when you boil it all down, Hobbes presents us with a really stark choice. The choice isn't between tyranny on one side and freedom on the other. No. For him, the choice is between the absolute order of an all-powerful ruler and the absolute deadly chaos of the state of nature. And when you put it that way, he was convinced any rational person would choose order, every single time.
And that leaves us with this provocative question that is just as real and relevant today as it was in the 17th century. Hobbes forces every society to look in the mirror and confront this really uncomfortable trade-off. In a world full of threats and uncertainty, how much of your own personal freedom are you willing to give up for the promise of safety? It's a question we are all still trying to answer.